Welcome back to the FOS studio in New York. I'm Dan Roberts, and I've got the Major League Soccer Commissioner, Don Garber. Don, thanks for coming in.
Good to be here, Dan.
Wow. So, been many years that we have talked and have seen the growth of this league. You are entering your 26th year as commissioner.
Yeah, I think you were in
Goodness
6th grade
gracious.
or 7th grade when I started.
That sounds about right. And we are embarking on the 30th season for this league. So 30 years, and we're at 30 teams, so some nice synergy there. You've got the newest team in San Diego, the latest expansion team. So talk to me about the growth of the league and where things stand in the 30th season.
Well, it's a great milestone for us. 30 teams, 30 years, a couple more years till the World Cup in 2026 that, will be the rocket fuel for our entire sport. Lots of growth, starting with just 12 teams and adding cities and owners and fans and history to professional men's soccer in this country, and obviously lots of foundation, lots of stadiums, including breaking ground for our 27th stadium in New York City that will open up in 2027. So it's been a great journey, Dan.
Yeah, I want to talk about the facilities and stadiums. There's so much there, but let's start with San Diego. I mentioned the latest expansion team. The expansion fee is up to $500 million. That was for the San Diego club. And you guys have kind of set a number of records in terms of financials. I mean, the transfer window and those fees, also attendance records. Talk to me a little bit about who can now own a team in this league, and why is an MLS club a great investment?
Well, I think sports as an asset class is a great investment, and frankly now almost more than ever. I think when you look at the significant asset growth, the value of our teams over years, the original investment was a couple $1 million in 1996 and averaging now almost $700 million. So it speaks to what these teams mean to the owner and those families and entrepreneurs and industrialists that look to make a name for themselves by supporting the growth of this beautiful game and helping Major League Soccer get to where it is today. And the good news is there's a return on their investment. And whether there's a team sale or a limited sale over the last number of years, people who put money into MLS teams get a good return. And I think that's true in the rest of the sports industry. Almost the rest of the leagues now, with the limited partnerships and the private equity investment, it has woken the world up to what a valuable asset sports teams and leagues can be.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. I mean, not just with MLS, but it seems to me that the rate of new purchases of stakes in teams is accelerating even more than before across the landscape. You guys do allow private equity up to 30%. Now the NFL has allowed private equity owners up to just 10% to start with. But of course, you have celebrity part owners, you've got actors, you've got athletes. So it's not just PE, but there is a whole new class of people who have the money who are getting into sports ownership. When you look across to the other pro leagues, what do you see happening there, especially in women's sports? And there's a movement afoot.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of gave the answer to the question. There is a movement afoot in this industry, speaking to, teams matter. If you are a fan of a particular sport or you have presence, if you're Caitlin Clark and you mean something in the sports landscape, you want to be taking your brains and your contributions off the court or off the field and be able to generate value for yourself, but also use your personality, your character, your force of nature, your celebrity to be able to drive value. Will Ferrell was an original investor in LAFC. He goes to every game, and when you see him promoting a new movie, he's wearing an LAFC hat. Matthew McConaughey, original investor in Austin. He's a powerful force in the city and throughout the state. And athletes, are making a lot of money thanks to the value that sports teams are creating, and they're looking for alternative investments. Sports teams can do that. Tom Brady and his investment in the Los Angeles Raiders. What's really interesting, Dan, is how new that is. It's a really new phenomenon that you're starting to see. The days of old when these industrialists came in and right. They owned a railroad and then they owned a sports team, and now it becomes Reese Witherspoon buying a piece of the Nashville team.
So let's talk about the Apple TV deal. A couple of years into the deal now, and very interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, Messi and his financial involvement. I mean, this is practically unheard of, that the way this deal is arranged for one star player. But also with Apple betting a lot on people subscribing to, another OTT platform.
Right. So, it's a very exciting deal for us, relationship for us. This last week, we just had the premiere for a docuseries called Onside Major League Soccer that will air on Apple, and their resources and marketing and energy behind that. There's going to be giant balls around 4 or 5 different cities, including here in Times Square, starting last week. So, they're a great partner, and beyond the breadth and scope and the ecosystem that's supporting this MLS Season Pass product, it gives us an opportunity to have a global offering. No blackouts, whether you're in Munich or whether you're in Miami or San Diego or Sao Paulo. You're watching an MLS game in 4K, whatever device, Android device, an Apple device, on a streaming television, and we're excited about it. It is, in our view, the future of consumption, year 3, and yes, you're right, Messi has been a great partner in that project. They ran a terrific post-Super Bowl promo. I don't know if you saw that with him kicking a football through a field post after the big game. So we're very pleased with Apple, and we're excited about the relationship.
Now, you guys haven't shared subscriber numbers yet or trends.
I
on how
would.
that's
Apple
going.
doesn't, so you got to get them on. Get
That's
Eddie Q
right.
from Apple on,
That's right.
and he'll give you some
Yeah,
numbers.
we all want those numbers. When you look writ large at what's happening in media rights, the NFL is doing the same thing in terms of parceling out more games to streamers. It's funny, back at our Tuned In Summit last September, we had Mark Lazarus, the chairman of NBC, and I asked him, these streamers, these tech-only giants are kind of breathing down your neck. And he said, well, we have an advantage still because we have broadcast. But it seems to me that broadcast doesn't necessarily have much of an advantage anymore if the biggest bidder is an internet company like an Apple TV or an Amazon Prime or a Netflix. I mean, is that where you think everything is going? Could we see the NFL just give a whole Sunday season to a Netflix?
Yeah, Dan, I do believe that the megaphone that you have with linear still is valuable. We still have a deal with Fox. We have a deal with Univision. Those are domestic deals where Apple is a global deal, and that's important to us. If we have players from 79 different countries, if we're signing a Korean player or an Argentinian player, Colombian player, a Japanese player, it allows us to be able to touch very directly fans of MLS through a very easy to access relationship. I do think that it will evolve over time. Mark is smart. NBC is doing a great job providing broad exposure to their partners, but they also have a great streaming service. I'm a subscriber. Yeah. So I do think the market is changing, it's evolving. I do think there's got to be some consolidation. People were complaining about cable is too expensive, and now many people still have cable or a mini bundle, and they've got multiple streaming subscriptions. And at some point, that's going to have to all come together in a way that makes sense for the fan in the case of the sports industry.
That's the risk with an Apple TV, is you're asking people to subscribe to yet another platform.
And you've got to drive value. So if you give them great docuseries, every MLS game is produced in high quality. We have a multi-screen environment. We have data. We've got great broadcasters. We're delivering every single game as if it's the national game of the week. And that level of production and that level of appeal and that level of accessibility is something that we're really banking on will help grow our fan base.
I mentioned what the other leagues are doing with regard to media rights. Let's talk a little bit about TV and the live sports landscape. Of course, the NBA has seen a little bit of a dip in its numbers and a dip for its All-Star game. NFL kind of remains strong and it's must-watch. Maybe it's the scarcity. I mean, I kind of have a take that as you look around at what's new and exciting in sports, you see a lot of one-off appointment viewing, whether it's a shorter season, unrivaled, TGL in golf, things that are kind of new format and they're shorter form, whereas these longer seasons, maybe we're seeing some fatigue for people with these long seasons. I mean, what do you make of the trends we're seeing?
I think this business we're in, it birthed your company, right? We're all so interested in sports and these transformational, transcendent characters, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, these moments, and whether it's TGL, which I've watched, or whether it's pickleball, or whether it might be, I do think with broad distribution through digital and streaming channels, there's no end to the way we can target consumers. I just think that relationship's going to be different. You still do need to have big events, and we've heard, most recently a big streamer, the woman who runs content, talking about big events matter. So I believe in our business. I think there's no surprise to anybody that sports as an investment continues to grow. And as the media business continues to transform, sports, live events will be must-see TV.
Yeah.
And whether that TV is a screen or whether it's in some other device, it could be on your Apple Watch. I believe we're in the right spot, and the sports industry is going to continue to evolve to deliver exciting, memorable moments for fans and customers.
When we talk about the length of the season, a lot of chatter for MLS with shifting the schedule of the season to match the international schedule. Talk a little bit about that and whether that might be the future for you guys, making MLS, it already has an international flavor with the shields and the logos and the FC and the clubs, right. But this would really put you in the same window as international soccer.
We have a very long season. One thing about soccer is you can't play more than a couple of times a week. These guys are running 8 to 10 miles. Goalkeeper isn't, but everybody else is. And, there is the uniqueness of other tournaments that take place within our season. Hockey just did that. The NHL and the Nations Cup was brilliant. And I think we're all looking at that, the NBA having their in-season tournament. So when you continue to add these tournaments, MLS with our Leagues Cup, you're just lengthening the amount of time that you have to create those moments and capture people's attention. And all of us are looking for different moments to be able to keep fans' attention. With us, it's MLS is back, and then it's Decision Day, and then we have our rivalry week, and we have all these different promotions and moments. But at the end of the day, football or soccer is played on a different calendar than we're on. And as we become more and more important in the global soccer landscape, as we start buying and selling more players, we're top 5 or 6 in the world, both incoming sales and outgoing sales. As we start thinking about prioritizing, aligning with the rest of the world, an international calendar is making more and more sense. A lot of work to do. It's cold now. We had a game where Kansas City played Miami in a Champions Cup game for CONCACAF, our FIFA regional organization. It was 5 degrees. And it was the middle of February, or the third week of February, and no scarves. You can't wear a hat, all these rules like that. But Messi scored a goal. Yeah. There were people in the stands. We had a game in Colorado, similar. It was cold, but fans are there. They care about it, and these guys are running around. So we'll figure out a way to make it work if it's right for our teams.
Now, if you shift the schedule, does that put you in competition with the NFL?
Well, I think we're actually in competition with the other major leagues even more now, right? So we do have the summer where, baseball, there are many other sports that do play in the summer. The other leagues are stretching their seasons longer. But, the most important part of any league's competition is your playoffs and your final. And we're right smack in the busiest time in the major leagues. And that's part of our decision making. Do we move it to May? Do we move it to June? So we have to figure all that out.
Nice. As we look to the future, we talked about expansion a little bit. You're at 30 clubs, NFL 32, baseball 30. I mean, at what point does the expansion stop, or how many teams is the right number for MLS?
I at 20, I thought we'd never get to 22. 22, I never thought we'd get to 24, and on and on. I don't know the answer to that. Just from a competition scheduling perspective, there's no surprise that the other major leagues are either at 30 or 32, right?
Right.
There's just so many games that you could play within a window. But I think there are many cities that have interest in Major League Soccer that want to build stadiums. I'm very bullish on professional soccer overall on the men's side and the women's side. Cities have really embraced it in places we never imagined. Our very popular teams in Cincinnati and in St. Louis, brand new MLS teams that are selling out beautiful stadiums that are in their downtown environments. So, I have given up predicting on when MLS will stop expanding, but it's hard to imagine you would get past 32.
Yeah, you mentioned cities, the Whitecaps up for sale, and I wondered, whether that might be a team that comes back to the U.S. and maybe you move them to another one of these great cities.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. That team is for sale. It was one of our early teams. Great ownership group. They built a great fan base, and we'll see how that develops over time.
And then finally, we talked about stadiums. I remember when NYCFC was a brand new team. You talk about the weather, the season opener there, it was always freezing, and
right.
Still playing in Yankee Stadium, but they have a new stadium on the way. if we zoom out a little bit, I see sort of a facilities arms race happening across the different sports leagues. WNBA has been pressured to build better facilities for all of its teams. A lot of those teams are playing in kind of small arenas and could probably fill larger arenas. As you look to kind of the next 5 to 10 years, is there going to be more pressure on the few MLS teams left that don't have a glitzy new stadium?
I think so. That's probably a good thing. Over time, you'd like to know that every single team has a soccer stadium of their own, or like in Atlanta, where they had 70,000 people at their opening game playing in Arthur Blank's, Falcons Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's not a bad thing, right? Seattle, 30, 40,000 fans. So I think if you have a big stadium that was built for soccer, it works, and it works fine. But there's nothing like an intimate facility where you can control every aspect of your calendar, of your fan experience, of your food and beverage, and all the things that deliver value to make it, in essence, almost like a cathedral for the game. New York City is the best example of that. I mean, a near $1 billion stadium in New York City, part of a great development that has affordable housing. It will embed NYCFC even more into the fabric of, New York. If you make it here, you can make it anywhere. So we're excited. Open up in 27. I was in Miami the other day. Their stadium is being built. It's coming out of the ground. That'll open up sometime in 26. And man, it's hard to imagine that at some point we'll have 30 soccer-specific stadiums.
Let's end this way. If we tie it all together, I've mentioned women's sports a lot and the rise of women's leagues. There's WNBA, there's Unrivaled. I've mentioned these kind of new formats like TGL in golf that are exciting, new investment. If you look around the landscape at what's kind of exciting right now in the business of sports, a lot of these upstart leagues that are launching women's sports, what kind of lessons can you take away for how you manage Major League Soccer?
It's interesting, Dan. I think it's the other way around. So I think when you speak to the brothers who are running the PLL, or I'm very close to the NWSL commissioner. I think they look more to MLS as opposed to us looking to them. Part of that is because we started where they are now, trying to figure out where they fit in the landscape, building facilities, creating a relationship with players, having a point of differentiation with fans in a very, very competitive environment. And we've been able to go from strength to strength. And we're only 30 years old, right? So you think about all that growth. It is a relatively short period of time when the other leagues are 100 years old. What I do love about the new concepts is it speaks to that there's no end to the interest that consumers have in live sports. So what other things can we do that take advantage of that? Should we be thinking about a small-sided concept? What do we do in women's sports? Should we be thinking about international exhibitions similar to what the NFL is doing overseas, or what some of the European soccer leagues are looking to do around the world? Do we think differently about our format? These new competitions. I'm proud of the Leagues Cup and what we're doing with Mexico. How do you expand that, or do you expand that, or you do that with other countries? So it forces everybody to be innovative, and it forces you to break some glass, and forces you never to look over your shoulder and always look forward. And I think that's the most exciting part of the business.
Sounds like yes, 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 thinking about all these things.
Of course, yeah.
Nice.
It makes it fun.
Nice. Don, thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan.